All right, there she is. My 1993 Coyote, was a Research Dynamics Coyote 3. Now I know most of you people have probably never heard of Research Dynamics, so I'll give a little backstory on them. Research Dynamics is out of Sun Valley, Idaho, and originally it's a ski company, a lot like K2 or Scott. They made skis throughout I think the late 70s and 80s, and by the late 80s, about 89, maybe 88, they decided that they wanted to make a little more money by selling bikes in the summertime, and so they started their bike division, which is funny because like whoever ran that company wasn't very original, because everything was, even though the company's called Research Dynamics, everything's called the Coyote. Their skis were the Coyote, their bikes are Coyote, everything's Coyote, it seems, with that company. But yeah, so I mean, this was sold out of Pedersen's ski shop, back in the early 90s. So like, this is in 93. Yeah, it was just a ski company that decided to make bikes just like K2 and Scott. And actually this was probably made in the same factory. If you actually, when I've looked at Scott bikes from the early 90s, they're almost identical to this, or this is identical to those, whichever way you want to look at it. So but yeah, this is my tank. I call it the Purple Beast. I don't know if you could really tell through the camera and your computer, but it's purple. Yes, it is. So let's go over a little bit. I've had this bike, a couple years now. And the story behind it is, I went to a secondhand shop, like here in Salt Lake City we have the DI, and I went in and I saw it and I thought, oh, that thing's beat, but what really caught my eye was that it's full chromoly. It's chromoly, front and rear triangles, and fork. And so, I mean, it's a decent quality bike, but I walked away from it. I looked at it, I said, no, I don't want it, and I walked away. I thought it's too big, needs a paint job. It's too much work. I don't want to have to deal with it. But I was thinking about it because the bike I was riding at the time was a specialized, like, hard rock, which had a chromoly front triangle but a high tensile steel rear triangle, which kind of made the bike a little too noodly and heavy, and just I didn't like the way it rode very much. And I was looking at this and I was thinking, well, it's only $30. So I went back to the DI and I was looking at it again, see if it's there, and I'm like, well, it's full chromoly, it's decent, it's a little bit big. I said, maybe if I don't like it, I can just resell it. Maybe I can sell it for $40 and make a little money on it. But so I bought it and I brought it home, and it sat for like 3 days. I didn't even touch it. And eventually I was like, well, let me, one night I was just like, let me just test ride this thing. So I put some air in the tires and I took it for like a 10-minute test ride, and like that was all it took. I fell in love with this bike. I had to have it. I kept it. There was no way I was gonna sell it. So that's kind of the backstory to it. Man, it is, look at the dirt under here. Let's see if we can do this. This thing's been sitting for a while, and that was, when I bought this, it was probably about 2 years ago. Let's see. I mean, the paint is definitely not in the best condition, but there is no dings or dents into this thing. It's just all chipped paint. This thing got moved around someone's garage for 20 years. If we can see in there, I don't know if you can see it. There's the Pedersen's Ogden sticker. So this thing came from Ogden, Utah originally. But yeah, it's 4130 chromoly, front and rear. So let's see. There's not a bolt or a part on this bike. When I decided I wanted to keep it, I took it completely apart and I re-greased the headset. Which let's take a look at this headset for a second. As you can see, the cable was supposed to go through here, but since I changed out these these butterfly or touring bars or whatever you want to call them, that didn't work out so well. So I ended up going with one of those cable hangers there. Now this headset is actually 1 1/4, and this bike's pretty burly. It's just big all around, but they decided to use a 1 1/4 headset you know, in tube. I mean, look how big this tube is on here. This thing's massive. And that's another thing about this bike, that it's just burly. I mean, I weigh 380 plus pounds right now, and this thing doesn't even care. This thing doesn't flex, very little if at all. I mean, this thing's is just amazing to ride. It's smooth, you know, it's nice. Now, it's not anything like high-end chromoly. It's not Tange or True Temper or Columbus or whatever else. Oh man, look at my chain. Holy good grief. That needs to be cleaned. Yeah, this thing hasn't had much maintenance lately. Look at the grease in there. Well, this thing's definitely gonna have to take a one over. But like, I replaced the bottom bracket because the original thing that came in there was, it was pretty gone. I mean, it was dry, and I tried to re-grease it and take it apart. It was some weird bottom bracket that you can actually take it out. One side had like big bearings and the other side had small bearings, and it was just some weird thing, and it just didn't work out. So, and the thing is, that is a 73 millimeter wide bottom bracket shell, which is another kind of odd thing. So it was hard to find a bottom bracket for this bike, being 73, I think, by 114. So that took a little bit to find. And again, you know, the odd size on the headset is, you know, I guess you could call these things negative. I mean, that's a pretty big, you know, headset, which is good. You know, that thing's burly and it's gonna last, but it's hard to find parts for. And luckily, a couple months back, I found another Research Dynamics Coyote 3 about the same year, and it had the same headset. And that is actually where I got this cable hanger from, was from that other bike. And so, you know, I have an extra headset now sitting, you know, on this other frame. The other frame is like a 17-inch. It's just too small, and it's way more beat up than this. It got neglected and left out, but you know, the headset's still in good condition, so I can use that later on. An extra stem if I need it, considering this is a 1 1/4 or like a 28.6 millimeter. You know, you just can't find this stuff. You can get headsets for this off like eBay, but you know, you don't have a lot of choices, and the prices are pretty high. As you can see, Sugino cranks that I put on here, brand new. I don't think, let's see, the only thing original to this bike is the seat post, the stem, and the shifters here. These guys, the shifter, and because it's like a one-piece brake lever shifter setup. And yeah, so I kept those because they work, but I ended up, oh, this is original, the front derailleur. No need to replace that, it works fine. But as you see, I put a Dior LX on the rear, got that on sale. Some Tektro CR720s. The wheels actually came off a Trek 950, so they're LX hubs. Let me see if we can move this thing just enough to find out what these hubs are. No. Without dropping the bike here. Let's see. There it is. Probably not gonna be able to see it, but yeah, they're Dior LXs. So Dior LX hubs, matrix wheels. Like I said, these came off a Trek, but you know, they're on here now, so there really isn't much on this thing. I put the racks. I have the front rack from Nash Bar. Yeah, I've done a lot of work to it, but it rides amazing. I love it. It's a great touring bike, or just commuting bike, and whichever you want to do with it. Honestly, like, I never really use the rear rack though. I always put my panniers on the front. One, they fit better, and two, I like that I can see, you know, like if I'm going to hit something, because I'm always worried if I'm going to run into anything with, or like my panniers are going to catch. So I keep them on the front. That distributes the weight a little better, and you know, and then I can keep an eye on them. Like if they're going to hang up on anything, I could see, because you know, they're right up in front of me. So put on the extra water bottle. So with this, I could fit 2 big bottles, as you can see, and 1 smaller bottle right in there. And I like these because they're, you know, they're movable. I've got the computer. Not much else to say. I figured that if I ride this thing and I lose 100 pounds or so, I think I'm going to rebuild it. I'm going to tear it all down again, and I'm going to have it powder coated like sunflower yellow or school bus yellow or something, some bright yellow color, and then put it all back together again. So, because although it's a little bit too big for me, you know, being a 23-inch frame, and I'm supposed to be riding a 21, so you can see the seats kind of, you know, down about as far as I can get it. The 3 points of contact work, you know, the pedals, the seats, and the handlebars. It fits, it rides comfortably. It's not comfortable to stand over, but like I tell my wife, 99.5% of the time I'm riding it, I'm not standing over it. So, you know, that's what counts. And there she is.